I've got the same shaft in 3 different flexes. So I've got 3 modus tour shafts and I've got them in X, stiff and regular. And I want to see what the difference is in spin, height, flight, ease, to see how much they separate when we change the flex. Now I did want to do this as a blind test, but I almost know a little bit too much. They've got slightly different patterns. So if I get this at the same distance, when we go up here, the first one that starts getting kinks there is the extra stiff, and then with the kinks start here in the stiff, then they start here in the regular. And then in the X as well, it is a girthier shaft. It is a bit thicker here, and I can notice that when I'm sat behind the balls. So it's not a fair test to say, oh, I don't know which one's which, because I do. But I'm hitting these in the Strixon ZXi7 in 2 degrees flat, because that's just my preference. I prefer to have that toe further down to keep the ball to the right hand side, because I get a bit overdrawy. But is there a difference in the shafts? Do the shafts help me keep it to the right or keep it to the left? And could that help you when you're looking at different flexes? It's a good example. Nice. So this one here is just the stiff, so I'm starting in the middle. That was a tiny bit thin, but we're on the green, just about. Let's have a few balls with a regular. And very soon I'm going to be sending out some hats. These hats are from Callaway. They've got a little bit of stretch to them around the sides, which is really cool. But I've got Send It, Nuked and Gimme. And you need to comment Send It, Gimme or Nuked in another video for a chance to win one. So we're going into the regular. Oh, that is definitely easier to get through the ball. I can feel a bit more bend and release. So it'd be interesting to see whether that has an effect on peak height and spin rate, but definitely just easier first thing in the morning. Also see if it's got an effect on the side spin as well. Yeah, I haven't got to try as hard for that. That is very nice. Oh, I've just missed the green. Oh, I didn't land far away. I've just picked an evil hole. The 2 degree flat head doing its job very nicely. Maybe a bit too well. Go on, stay there, stay there. And then he gets one drawing. So there will also be an element of dispersion. So when a shaft is too soft for someone, the shaft bends and the shaft releases into the ball. And if you've got too much pace for that shaft, it will bend and release at different rates. So it will give us a little bit more variation at impact. If we've got a stiffer shaft, it won't bend and release as much. Maybe we get one that matches someone's pace better, and it bends and releases back into the ball more consistently, so we get a tighter dispersion. And to the trained eye, like, I can just see there's a big difference in the thickness in these 2 shafts. So this is the regular, this is the extra stiff. This is definitely thicker to my eye. I don't know if you can appreciate that on the camera. And then we go extra stiff. Oh, different feel. To me, maybe I've got a bit more pace than some others, but it just feels more solid through impact. I didn't feel as much distortion with it. I am more familiar with this shaft as well, because I do have it in my set. And I feel like I could just repeat that shot more consistently, but I will flick back to the regular and the stiff. Yeah, nice. And again, that kind of like drums back to the idea that this bends and releases with my pace a bit better, so it's just easier for me to repeat. I could quite happily play with a set of clubs with a stiff in this same shaft without too much bother. I just know that it's a bit more precise in the flex that suits me. But when I go into a stiff, what am I giving away? How much discrepancy am I kind of giving up? Hey. Whoops, that wasn't necessarily the shaft. Feels okay. Again, I can play with it. I'm not going to complain if I have to play with a set of clubs with a stiff instead of an X, which is what I'm fitted for, but I just know there's just a little bit more spread. So again, if I played with a set of shafts in stiff instead of the one that I'm fitted for, like, if I hit an errant shot, if I hit one that's just a bit random, I'm not going to give myself a hard time, because I know that the shaft's just kind of contributing to that extra dispersion. Because I know I can still hit good shots. I would almost feel like I need to adjust to the shafts instead of just letting the shafts be part of my swing, if that doesn't sound too mystical. But then someone with a different speed to me, someone who's maybe a bit slower, might pick up the regular and get very consistent because the shaft bends and releases with their pace very well. And then they might pick up the extra stiff and just struggle to get it back into the ball. They might just struggle to get it to activate and bend during the swing. Wow, it's just that extra bit of movement. And just finally go back into the X. And that wasn't even a good strike. I didn't quite get that perfectly, but I'm still there on the green, or I was for a second. Yeah, it just matches my pace very well. So flex does have an influence on strike and ball flight and ease of the swing. Like the regular is definitely easier, but when I get a little bit warmed up, it just gets a little bit too variable in there. And I have used shafts that are far too stiff for me before, and they're just so hard to get into the ball and I can't get them to activate, and then I go back the other way. Goes back into bigger dispersion because I can't get it to behave itself as easily because it's just too stiff for my pace. But I could probably make it work to a degree. So are there any particularly bad ones to take out? I've got an anomaly there and there in the stiff. In carry, there's not really any anomalies, but I do have more spread. Then in the X, I've got a 2 degree variance and I'm much tighter too. I didn't strike that one particularly well. And then my spin rates are 5.8, 6, 5.9, 5.5, 6. So I'm going to take this one out because it is just slower and the spin change. So I just say the strike kind of poisoned that data a little bit more there. Spin rise in the REG, 5.8, 5.9, 6, 5.5, 5.6, 5.3. So there's a bit more spread in there. It isn't one anomaly. It's kind of like a little bit more variable for me. But we've got peak height 105 in the stiff. We've got 106 in the REG, 109 in the X. Then in terms of my delivery, I've got 93 mile an hour of speed in the stiff, 93.2 in the regular, 93.7 in the X. Again, testament to that shaft just being more suited to my pace. I've got 5 down on the X, 4.5 down on the REG, and 4.7 down on the stiff, so all thereabouts. That is within half a degree of each other. My path was 5.7 into out, 5.7 into out, stiff and regular. And then maybe with the extra, I don't know, girth in the X, we've gone down to 4.4, so I'm less into out in the X. That has changed. Then in the dispersion rings here, I've got a very tight dispersion ring in the white, which is extra stiff, and then blue in the regular, and then the stiff has got a bit more left to right spread. But I'm definitely tighter in the X because that shaft is fitted and suits me better. But bear in mind, my speed only just went up with the X. I've got more ball speed from it, maybe because I've got a bit more mass through the ball. I've got slightly lower spins on the stiff and the regular. Again, like I could live with this, but I'd rather have the solidity of knowing that I'm aiming for 6,000 in this and I got it. Launch angles are 17.1, slightly higher in the stiff and then even higher in the regular, so flex does increase the launch angle. I do tend to see lower launch and higher spin, and then higher launch and lower spin, so progressively I've got less spin in these three. They're not in order down here. So that is what I would expect, and I've got a bit more distance here, slightly less, and about the same in the stiff and regular, but just that extra bit of variation in that left to right direction. So in terms of the data points, it is very similar. It is very similar launch, just slightly different. It's very similar spin, just slightly different. But then there is a big difference in feel between them and a big difference in dispersion between them. So I'm gonna get the same data-ish, but then the end result is just a different dispersion. So when some people come in and go, okay, here's my swing speed, what stiffness should I use? There might be like a lightweight stiff that actually performs better than a heavier regular. It's not necessarily the flex that needs to be precise. In that line of shafts, where all three shafts are from the same manufacturer and in the same model, I've got subtle differences between them in data, but I'm looking at the dispersion as one of the main points of call within that. There's other shafts that are stiffer profiles than these, but I need a stiff in them because I can't quite handle the X. The X will be a little bit too much. But generally, the softer flexes are a little bit higher launch and a little bit lower spinning, and as we get stiffer, it gets lower and it gets more spinny, which is good to go into the greens, but we just need to try and match the shaft to your pace to get that dispersion in. And when I talk about the shaft, I don't mean just the flex, it's the type of shaft as well as the flex. On a side note, I just want to look at the side spin because I didn't point that out. I've got 531 in the X with 160 variants. And then when I get up to the regular, I go 660 side spin, so draw spin with 304 variations. So it's going from like 220 to 908. There's a big discrepancy there. I don't get that much spread in the X. When I go up into the stiff, I've got 506 a draw spin, which is less than the X, but I can get up to 1200 and I can go down to 36 the other way. So that's a big difference between the two that I did not see in the stiffer shaft. So you tend to get a bit less variation when the shaft is stiffer. Fittings are really important around this sort of like area, so it's never a bad idea to take the clubs that you've got to a retailer, hit them, see what they do, and then try some new stuff out in comparison just to see what you get out of it.